What is up, everybody, and welcome to the REIL Talks podcast. My name is Mike Singletary.
And I am Frank Chen, and we are going to be your hosts. And what we're going to do is break down what it takes to live life on your terms through entrepreneurship, specifically real estate investing.
So we're going to hit it hard, the good, the bad, and the real, because that climb, as any entrepreneur knows, is never smooth. So let's get real.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the REIL Talks podcast. I'm your host today with Mike Singletary and Frank Chen. Super excited to our guest today. We do have the pleasure speaking with Scott Jelinek. He is a successful entrepreneur and real estate investor with over 30 years of experience in the industry. And Scott has completed over 800 deals, established himself as a leader in the field, and developed a unique investment strategy called the slow flip. And once you guys hear about this, you're going to start wondering, why did I not start this sooner? And what I love about Scott is that he is passionate about sharing his knowledge and expertise, coaching and mentoring other investors, and helping them achieve their financial goals through real estate investing. And as much success as Scott has seen, he's still one of those guys that you could just tap him on the shoulder, ask him a question, he'd be more than happy to help you. He has dominated in his local market of Virginia Beach. I think that's where his local model is. While most investors are thinking, how do I go national? How do I go broad? Scott really focuses on helping the people in his local market in a very big way. And many of his students are doing a substantial amount of deals. Scott, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you here, man. I feel like you have it all figured out, but we're going to dive into your story a little bit more because it wasn't always that way. How are you doing today, man?
I'm fantastic. And I got to tell you, Frank, that might have been the best intro I have ever had in my entire life. I love that. I'm going to clip that out and use it. I like that.
You're welcome. I'll do that anytime for you, brother.
You might be the most interesting man in real estate, Scott. So at least you're right now for sure, man. You know, I mean, I never even heard of the slow flip, and I was doing research on you, and I know you're going to dive into it, but I was like, how did I not hear about this? So I'm so excited to talk to you about it.
You know, that's why I think I love sharing it so much, is because I almost get mad that I didn't know about this stuff earlier, because I feel like I could have not just been so much further, because there's not really further I'm even trying to get to, but I could have done it so much quicker had I started out with that plan. And that's why I'm always trying to get people on board with, whoa, do whatever that fancy stuff is you want, but do this also at the same time. And because then you can get to freedom.
And that's the core of our topic today. And I'd love to kind of dive into just that initial concept of the slow flip, right? And why this concept has really worked so well for you in your local market. And is it because of the market you're in, or is this like a national strategy you could use? Tell us a little bit more about kind of how you stumbled across this and, you know, where you are today with it.
So first, I want to answer the question you just mentioned, which is, does it just work in my local market? And it does not work everywhere. So that's an important thing. However, I buy not just in my local market. I also buy in Missouri. I buy in Illinois. I have people in my group buy in Indiana. I haven't bought there yet. There's certain markets where it works really well. So although I started in my local market, we kind of got mostly priced out of my local market now. So that's why we buy a lot. Like my last 35 properties have all been Midwest properties, and maybe 40. My last 40-ish are probably all Midwest properties because they work fantastically. So to tell you a little bit, and without making this a long story, because I know we only have 4 hours, so everybody's like, whoa, I got somewhere to be. So to give you the short version of a long story is, I did the conventional model. I've been buying houses since 1994, and I did the conventional model that everybody taught and still teaches. Everybody does, which is, the BRRRR method of buy and use, debt and leverage and all this fun stuff. That's a great talking points, and it all sounds sexy because anybody can do it by tomorrow and have 20 properties. And I did all of that, and I got to 84 properties by 2007. And you guys all know what happened in 2007. It's funny, I talk to people, I still feel like it was yesterday. And somebody said to me something the other day, they're like, that was 15 years ago, right? Or one guy who's in my group, he's like, I was in high school. And I'm like, oh, I don't even think about it. It was 15 years ago. But nevertheless, after or during the boom, during the bust, it all went to crap. Everything that everyone taught was a house of cards, and it all went to crap. And it really was striking to me that after it ended and the world recovered and we went back to normal, I started going to seminars again, like I always did, seminars, training, listening to stuff, reading books. And I was excited to go because I was like, I want to learn what they're teaching now, because clearly that was flawed. So I want to hear what's the new way of doing stuff. And I was almost shocked that they were teaching the exact same thing. And almost like, well, it can't happen twice. I'm like, well, really? Because I'm not starting over again. I lost 55 of my houses to foreclosure back then. I said, I am not
Oh,
starting
wow.
over again. And so one of the things I did was I started looking at, not everybody faltered during this time, right? Most people did. Most people got crushed. Most people went back to their jobs. Most people lost everything. But some people were thriving. And so it really struck me, and I started paying attention to these guys who were thriving. And I would have lunch, and I try and make conversation, and it was mostly about, what are you guys doing different? Why are you? Everyone else has got their tail between their legs, going back to their job, and you guys are buying more than ever, and you're crushing it more than ever. And one of the things I found across the board, 100%, not some of them, all of them, owned everything free and clear. And I'm like, but during the boom, if you told me you owned everything free and clear, I was laughing at you behind your back, telling you how stupid this guy is. If only he knew better. If only he knew what he was doing, he could leverage and make so much more money. He can do so much more, so much more, so much more. And it wasn't until the bust that I was like, well, I guess he knew what he was doing all along. And not only, and I know we're talking real estate, but not only with houses, but also their cars, their primary house, credit card, everything. They had no debt, period. And so I became almost obsessed with, okay, well, that's the life I want to model, right? But there was a hole, and the hole is, well, I lost 55 houses to foreclosure, so my credit's shot. I can't buy a pack of gum, right? I can't finance a pack of gum. I have no money left, so I can't just pay cash for stuff. So the idea of owning stuff for free and clear sounds real great, except, well, that's great if you have a couple $1 million and you want to buy stuff free and clear. So we kind of came up with a hybrid. What can we have to finance without using banks, because I was dead to banks. So I had to use private lenders. And then what's the fastest I can pay them off? And so we found the model, which we had made work, which was buying the lower end housing, using private money on 5-year mortgages. And then we sell them instantly without renovating, without doing anything, on 30-year mortgages. And so for the first 5 years, we're really not making any money. And that was the plan. Let's how much is the most we can do it to get it done in 5 years? And then we sell them on 30-year mortgages, and then we crush it. And so for the first 5 years, to be honest with you, I started that plan in 2011. For the first 5 years, I second guessed myself a lot, because I started buying a lot of properties and I'm not making a dollar. And I mean, I remember 2014, 15, I'm like, am I doing the right thing? I have all these houses and all I'm doing is churning. And it wasn't until 2016 where suddenly I was like, this is genius, because now they started becoming free and clear, free and clear, free and clear. And, so fast forward to today, I have 170 of them now. I have 5 pending, so 5 more pending. So I'll have 175, I guess, within a week or two. I have just under 80 of them are free and clear. I have 25 more that are going to be free and clear. One package I bought this December. And every month or two, there's another one paid off, another one paid off, another one paid off. And so if you can imagine, it's completely changed the way my model used to be. My model, I used to have 84 properties before the bust, and I had 84 mortgages. I collected all this money every month, and then I had to pay out all this money every month. Now I collect it and I get to keep it. And I know that was a long answer to a short question, but that's the more or less guidelines of what a slow flip is. We pay them off as quick as possible, and then we sell them on long-term financing. We're not landlords. We don't do repairs. We don't do leaky toilets. We don't do any of that stuff.
I mean, that's so fascinating to me. So, I mean, I have so many questions. All right. So, but I'll start with this. Going back originally, like, what is your buy box? What is that ideal property price point?
So, and you're gonna have listeners from everywhere, and I don't even
Right.
know where do you live?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Okay, so you're in
It
Austin.
does
So
not
you're
work there.
okay. So yeah, so you're in a market where when I even say these numbers, you're going to be like, you can't buy houses for that. And I always tell people when they say you can't, I say, well, don't argue with me. Just pull out the internet. You got the internet, right? Type in the whole country under this, and you're going to see there's total states with thousands of deals available. So we try and buy in my market. We try and buy them under $50,000. They were 30. Now we try and buy them under 50.
Okay.
In the Midwest states, we buy them anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. And before this is what's so interesting is when somebody hears $30,000, they hear, first of all, they say that's not possible. In my state, houses are 500,000. We can't buy a parking space for $30,000, right? And then when you convince them that yes, houses do exist, then they think either one of two things: either it's 4 pieces of plywood with a tarp, and that's your house, right?
Or hood house.
Or it's in such a bad area that they're just shooting each other, and it's absolutely awful. And neither of those things are true. And I was just out there, was it a week ago, Frank, when we were out in St. Louis, and I came a couple days early, and that's where I contracted these other 5. And I own maybe 40 or 45 out there, and I've never seen any of them until that day. I came early so I can see some of the ones I own, and I ended up buying 5 more. And I myself was shocked with how nice the neighborhood was, how nice the houses were. I'm like, how do you have a house for this price? It almost doesn't make sense. And I actually came back to my group talking about that. I said, it doesn't make sense that a house could be, and I'm going to say 30, even though I got some of them, one for 18, one for 20, one for 25, but let's say 30 grand. It doesn't make sense that a house could cost $30,000, and yet there's a line of people who will take it from you for $875 or $900 a month. It makes no sense to me, because I'm like, why don't they just buy it, right? Which is basically the whole premise of the model. Why don't they just buy it themselves for the 30? And it all comes down to education. The reality is, because the way everybody's taught is go to a bank, get a mortgage. Well, banks don't finance these. Banks don't want to do a mortgage for $30,000. They don't want to do it. They do not finance them. And so the seller is in a predicament where they need the cash to sell, and the buyer's in a predicament where they need the financing to buy. And so we just get in the middle. We give them the cash. It doesn't have to be our cash. You can use a private lender, and then we give them the financing. And that's it. We just get in the middle. And we pay them off in 5 years. They pay them off in 30, and we just process payments, which is the way I like it.
Genius. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Yeah,
John.
I got a burning question for you, because we're in a mastermind together, and you always talk about your student successes and the people who usually come across your events, your programs are usually doing the traditional model. And when as soon as they try just a handful of these deals, they can taking that skill set and now applying it to what you're teaching them, they're able to get a lot of deals in a short period of time. And, these are for the hustlers out there.
Right.
So my question to you is, why don't you feel like more investors have adopted this model?
So that's a great question. And more are, but some people listening to this right now hate it with a passion. When they hear it, they think a couple different things. One, they think slumlord, you're not repairing houses. That's a slumlord. I'm like, we're not landlords, period. We finance. We're the same as the bank. The only difference is when the bank has a distressed REO property, they will only sell it for cash. We're doing the same thing, only we're selling it with financing. That's the only difference. We're not telling you this is a beautiful house to move into. This is the house to you fix up and make your own. What we're doing is creating the financing for them. So that's number one. People hate it because they're like, I don't want to deal in low-end properties. And if you've ever been a landlord, these properties are the worst properties in the world. If you're a landlord, the worst. You're going to bring in the least amount of money, the highest headache, highest turnover. For slow flips, they're perfect. For landlording, I would never touch these properties. If you're a rehabber, you would never touch these properties because they're not going to be high ARVs or any ARVs for that matter. Some areas there's no retail sales, so they hate them. The other reason that I hear all the time, even from friends of mine, why they won't do this is they're like, well, what happens if everybody buys? Because they're buying them. They're allowed to refi. They're allowed to sell, and they do. So they're like, well, what happens if everybody buys? Then I won't have any of my houses. I'm not doing that. They want their houses. They love their houses. And I get it, but I always try and talk to them. I'm like, listen, we buy wholesale and we sell for what I call super retail, which is the highest retail you can have, but without agent commissions, without closing cost assistance, without having to repair them. So we buy it wholesale. We sell for super retail. If they do buy, now you take that money and buy 2 or 3 more. But I have friends of mine that they're always like, yeah, but I don't want to do this because I have one guy, he's a good friend of mine. He says, well, with my luck, they'll all buy. And I'm like, yeah, then you'll be rich. Like, what are we talking about? Problem here? Yeah. He said that seriously. He was like, I don't want to do this because with my luck, they're all going to buy them. And I'm like, that's the plan. I want them to buy. But that's really a big reason, those two are combined, why people don't do them. And the other side is a limiting belief that people come into my program all the time. And that's the whole reason why they believe they can't do it. And that is they don't have the money to actually fund them. And they believe they need banks, and banks won't fund them. And big thing of what we do and what I teach is raising private money. There's so much money out there. It's so easy. We pay 12% returns. So our lenders love us, and it's so easy to raise the money. But people they have this limited belief of like, well, if I get a nice property, I can do the Burr method and renovate it, and the bank will give me a mortgage for 30 years and, do all this conventional stuff. And my beliefs on that, when you get a 30-year mortgage, I basically tell people, and don't be offended if you guys have regular rentals, but I always tell people, I said, you have a job working for the bank. That's what you did. You signed up for a job. You have to do the repairs. You have to do the screening. You have to evict if somebody doesn't pay. You have to do all the collections. And then when you get the money, you need to send it on up to the bank. you got yourself a job, and the bank thanks you for it. They want to give you as many more as you'll take, right? They thank you for it. With our model, we flipped it on its head where we're the bank. And
you
people are
mentioned
doing the
this,
exact same thing, but they're sending us the money every month.
and I'm glad you touched on that, like being an employee or of your business. And we were talking about this at the mastermind too, is like you did have a rather, I would say, large operation when you were kind of at the beginning of this. And you mentioned like a story where you kind of had a revelation where you're like, I don't know if I even need all of this overhead. Can you kind of dive into that and tell us kind of the mindset behind, because a lot of investors feel like you have to build a big team, have office space, overhead, just to keep this machine going. Tell us a little bit more about how you flip that on its head.
So I'm not opposed to all of that if that's in your wheelhouse, and it's not mine. I've come to the realization that, and this is not putting myself down, but I've come to the realization that I am not a good manager of people, right? I've had my own business since I'm 19 years old. So how old am I now? I'm 49.
How old are you now?
Yeah, I'm 49. In a couple months, I'll be 50. And so I've never had a job really since I'm 19 years old. I've always had businesses. I've always had employees. But when I try to scale, when it's me in there managing people, I'm fine. But when I try to have managers managing people, and I've never been great at it, right? Not to say other people can't be great at it. Well, when I was growing my real estate business as a bigger business, and I had employees, I had coordinators, I had buyers, sellers, people, lead managers, I loved it. We were doing more deals than ever. And I used to always brag on it that I'm running a real estate investing business now. I'm not an investor. I'm running a real estate investing business. There's great taglines people love to use. But the reality is I was doing more deals than ever, but the amount of money I was actually getting in my pocket was less. It was less than ever. And everybody's like, yeah, but you can be away. And I didn't care. So I was away in 2013, my first time. And I told you this story just recently. I did a month-long vacation. And on that month, we spent a month in Panama. I had a lot of time to think, as you can imagine, having a month. We didn't even have phones that worked there, so I had a lot of time to think. Well, one of the things hit me like a ton of bricks, clear as day, was I worked for my employees. They did not work for me. I was doing deals to keep everybody employed. I was doing more deals to keep the contractors working. Even if they weren't good deals, I knew if I didn't keep them working, they would find another, somebody else to work for. And it became this whole thing where I'm doing deals to keep everybody else working. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And the day I got back, I got rid of everybody. And ever since then, I've been solo. So now we're talking, it's been 10 years now where it's just me.
You don't have a VA, you don't have anything.
I have nobody.
Really? Wow.
And I do less deals than ever now, and I make more money than ever. And it's crazy because everybody's like, yeah, but everybody, and this is where you were just saying, Frank, is that people love to say, yeah, then you don't have a business, you have a job, right? And I stopped arguing it, and I say, you're right. I have a very well-paid job where I work a couple hours a week. I make a ton of money. You're right. It's a job. And I just leave it at that. It's easier than the argument. I'm like, you're right. It's a job.
Sounds horrible.
Yeah. I'm lucky if I leave my house by noon, and my major objective for the day is who wants to go to lunch or happy hour. And, it's a job. Yes. I don't do deals if I don't go out and do them, but I'm okay with that.
I love it. You're essentially a lifestyle investor, right? I mean,
absolutely,
living the ultimate lifestyle. Can you kind of talk to me? What does your marketing look like? How do you acquire the properties?
So two different things. I do wholesaling also. So I do wholesaling and slow flips. I do not rehab anymore. I stopped rehabbing at the same time in 2013. I completely stopped rehabbing in 2013. So 10 years I haven't rehabbed, other than like a rental that comes on and I want to fix it up and sell it. So I do wholesaling and slow flips. So I do regular marketing, which conventional marketing. I hate all the cold calling. I hate the text blasting. I hate all of that. Not to say it doesn't work. You guys may love it. And when I say I hate it, it's not because I don't believe it works. I hate it because I hate that I get it all day long.
I get it all day long too. And I do it all day long.
But most people do. And the guys I know who do it, they love it because they get a great result from it. They do text blasting and they do cold calling and ringless voicemails, and they buy a lot of houses and it works well. So they love it. The reason I hate it is, can you imagine? I don't know how many houses you guys have, but I have 170 houses. So think about how many calls I get a day from everybody. And so it's so annoying that even though I know it works, I don't want to participate in it because it annoys me so much. So what I do is I do a lot of internet, I do pay-per-click, and I do a lot of SEO, and I do direct mail. Those are the two things I do. That's primarily for my wholesaling business. Some slow flips come from it because we don't know where the lead will come, what the lead will end up being. And then for slow flips specifically, I don't do any marketing when I'm doing out west. It's through, believe it or not, we buy a lot from Facebook groups, the investor groups, and the reason is People don't want them. The landlords don't want them. The rehabbers don't want them. And so wholesalers get them and they can't sell them. So they're just listed every day, and I'm watching it, and then I'll make contact and we'll go look at it and make an offer. And so we buy them from groups, and then believe it or not, even out Midwest, you can buy them right off the market. They're listed properties. We wait till they're on for a while, we make a low offer, and we get them right off the market.
That's
So for
awesome.
slow flips, we really don't have to do marketing. It's just a cash flow. The whole thing with slow flips is just cash flow.
And if you guys are looking for like just quick tips like this, I know Scott won't toot his own horn, but I'm one of his cheerleaders. And I think what he's doing on social media is there's something to be learned there. Is he just goes out there and is probably the most natural and most natural approach to social media. And it works phenomenally for you, right? Like you're current in your market.
Well, the challenge I have is, and I was just telling you guys when we were talking about the podcast, is that I can't do editing, right? And I know you said you have someone to do it, but I don't have a team of anybody, so it's just me. And so I tried for a while to do that, to outsource stuff. And what happens is, in the challenge to outsource, I end up doing nothing. So I finally had to just agree that nope, it's just me. There is no editing. There is no intro. I have a podcast. There is no intro and there's nothing. It's just me yapping, and then I upload it. My videos, it's just me on my phone. I know how to edit the front and back off to shrink it, but I don't know how to do any fancy editing. So everything I do, my YouTube, everything is just, there is nothing fancy about it. And I tell people, even though I say, listen, if you're looking for this, then this is going to be the wrong one for you, because I don't know how to do any of that stuff, and I don't even try. I'm like, nope, this is just me. I'll just talk and put it out the way it is. And some people are attracted to that and they like it. And other people, they don't like it. I'm sure, that they want to see all the stuff that makes it work for everyone else. For me, I just record.
How do you do this as a one-man show? I'm fascinated by this, because how do you do all, obviously you're buying, you're marketing, and then even the selling. Well, I mean, what's the dispo side of it? I mean, you have to walk the properties. Obviously, you might have boots on the ground. I don't know. Walk me through that.
So the wholesaling, I only do local.
Okay.
So we'll start there. So the wholesaling, I only do local. I'm not one of those virtual wholesale guys. I market and do the wholesaling locally. So, and when I say it's just me, it's also my wife. So my wife answers the phone, like we call it the byline or bat phone. The marketing goes to a specific phone that my wife answers, and then she'll set an appointment for me. And then she'll say, hey, you have an appointment Friday at 2:00, and she'll send me a text with all their information. So I'll go on, I physically go, I don't do anything virtual. I physically go and meet with the seller, make them an offer on the spot on the house. When I get a contract, then it's just me. I do everything from my phone. I will text. I have over 2,500 names on my buyer's list. I probably sell the same ones over and over again. And I always tell people, I said, once you have professional buyers, they buy 5 houses a month. You don't need so many of them. How many houses are you going to do? I don't need so many buyers. If they're buying 2, 3, 5 houses a month each, how many buyers do you need to sell your little 2 or 3 or 5 houses you're doing a month? You don't need too many. So I just
absolutely. But on the slow flip process on the dispo side, you say you really don't do anything to it, right? You just put it right back.
We do nothing to it. So I have a system for that. So we'll find a person to go do pictures and video for us. So we typically will have them do pictures, video, put it on a lockbox. And then we have a process for self-showing, which I know, again, people hate. I've been doing it for years. I've been doing it since 2008. I always joke because my lockbox code to this day is 2008. And I always tell people, I said, my code's been 2008 since 2008. I haven't had an issue yet. Doesn't mean I won't have an issue tomorrow, but I do self-showings. We don't let them know that they're self-showing until they're standing on the porch waiting on me. And then I'll say, oh, we got hung up. I'm not able to make it, but let me give you the code and let yourself in. And so we let them self-show without knowing they're going to. And then for those that want it, after they go, we walk them through putting the key back in the box. For those that want it, the first time we'll ever speak with them again is when they're ready to do the paperwork. And I don't go out and meet people. We don't do contractors. We don't paint. We don't clean up. I don't do any of that stuff.
Wow.
We operate as though we, I hate to say it, it's like we were a bank. The only difference is now banks will sell distressed properties, like when they foreclose and it's distressed, but they won't offer the financing. They were like, nope, it's cash. You got to take it.
Yeah. Yeah. You serve a big need. So you don't clean up at all. I mean, because I feel like sometimes that's a mental hurdle that you have to get through, right? Like you think you should leave.
Opposite is true. And it's going to be so crazy when I tell you this. So I've had houses that were immaculate and perfect.
Yeah.
And they sit and sit and sit. And then I have ones that are filled with garbage and, and distressed, and they'll go right away. And it dawned on me, and I ask people all the time, what made you pick this one? What made you pick this one? And it dawned on me when a house was perfect, because of what we're offering, we give them a great opportunity. We give our buyers a great opportunity, long-term owner financing. We don't do a balloon. We don't do any of that lease option. It's a full term. Well, it's a huge opportunity for them. When the house is perfect, they start feeling like, what's the scam here? Why is he
Mm.
financing this for me? Something, it's got to be some kind of scam. When the house needs work, they understand why they're getting that deal. They understand they're getting a deal because it needs to be cleaned up and painted or carpeted or whatever it may need. And so they sell faster. It doesn't make any sense, but
That's
it's a
so cool.
fact. They sell faster when they're as is. So
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something else funny, and stop me if I ramble too much.
No, I love
This
it,
is
man.
awesome.
So
Yeah. Are you kidding?
when somebody does ask about, like, and I'm just going to make up something. Let's say it's filled with beer cans, right?
Right.
And they'll be like, "Well, are you guys going to clean up all these beer cans before we do this?" And my answer is always the same, regardless of what they ask. I say, "No, and you're lucky. You're lucky we didn't do it yet, because our guy's probably going to charge $2,000 or $3,000 for it, which means we'll have to charge a larger down payment. But you can probably do it for a couple $100. And I always say, and always answer with, "You're lucky. You're lucky we didn't do it." And they always end it with, "No, no, no, don't do it. My kids will take care of it. My husband's a contractor. Don't worry. Don't do anything."
I'm gonna write
And
this down.
whenever they ask for anything, I say, they'll be like, "Well, I said, "Well, we can do anything you want." I said, "We could put an addition on if you want, but it'll be, instead of $5,000 down, it'll be 85,000 down. If you want to do that, we can do." "No, no, 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 no. I was just asking, this is the price for the way it is right now. If you want something done, sure, we're going to need more down payment, in which case you're paying way more than you could have just done it yourself."
Wow. So another question, if you don't mind, because I'm
No.
super fascinated. So say you buy it, if ARV is $100,000, right? You're typically buying it 50, something like that, or
So I have to clarify on what we're talking. We're talking slow flips today, right? So
we're
we're
doing
not talking
talking
wholesale.
slow flips, just slow
Yeah.
flip. Yes.
So I just did a video on this yesterday, and I haven't actually posted it yet. And basically, I say houses have multiple values,
Right.
which people don't really understand, because we all are taught ARV, which is the after repair value,
Right.
which is meant for a buyer, like a family, to come in and buy it, get a mortgage. And I always say a house has three different values. It has the retail value, which is the ARV, right? If a family was going to buy it, get a bank loan, and move into it, that's the price a family would pay for it. But it also has the cash value, and it doesn't even have to be distressed for a cash value. If someone needs a cash deal, they either can't wait for a mortgage, or it's distressed or whatever. Well, that 100,000, let's say it had 100,000 ARV, the cash price may turn out to be 70 grand, right?
Right.
So let's say it didn't even need a bunch of work, but that's what cash investors will pay. And then it has a third value, and the third value is the owner financed value, because it's all economics are based on supply and demand, right? Well, there's not a lot. Say there's 100 houses available, but only 3 of them have owner financing. Well, to those people that need owner financing, those 3 are extremely valuable. So they're not looking at, well, the other one's 100 grand. They're looking at, this one I can get. And so it might be 130 it sells to them for, 150. This is the thing, because I'm playing devil's advocate here, because I've had this conversation before. People say, "Yeah, but if you're selling it to them for 150 grand, say, well, then you're ripping them off, right? It's only worth 100 grand." And that makes sense. Except when you look at the alternative is, say they're paying $1,000 a month, they were going to still pay $1,000 a month to rent something, and they own nothing. Now they can own a house for $1,000 a month. It didn't cost them any more than they were already paying. Only now they get to own something. And so people always like, "Oh yeah, but that's this and that's that." I'm like, "Well, talk to my buyers. My buyers hug me and love me, and it's completely changed their lives." I've had people in there for years and years and years. It's changed their lives, because now it's their house. And every year when their neighbors are getting a rent increase, their payment stays the same for the full 30 years. So there's a huge benefit to them as well. And again, I know I ramble, but I'm going to tell you how I answer that question. If you were sitting down with a buyer, and the buyer was to say I'm selling this house for 100 grand, and they say, "Well, how is it 100 grand? The one I saw, there's one next door. Let's say it's right next door. The same house is only 70 grand." My answer to that is a really good deal. I would buy that one instead. And they'll inevitably say, "Yeah, but that one you got to pay cash for." And then I say, "Well, then I would buy mine." That's it. I
Right.
always, I'm brutally honest with everybody. If they find a better deal, they should buy the better deal. And then they're going to say, "Well, that one you got to pay cash for." I'm like, "Well, then I would buy mine." That's it.
So awesome, man. That's
What
great.
what fascinates me about Scott is, like, he's the antithesis of what everything is being taught in the real estate industry, right?
Right.
Like, what you got to build, how involved you have to be in your business in order to achieve this end goal. And what's cool, what Scott has done is that he's reverse engineered a process that has ultimately yielded the same outcome with a fraction of the risk, the headache, the time commitment, all of it. And that's why I keep telling them, like, why aren't more people doing this? You've had students have come through who are completely skeptical. And as soon as they get their first 5 deals, you mentioned there's was it a family friend's son who got started, and within like less than 18 months, how many deals did he end up doing?
Well, not 18, but now he's going to be he's going to start his 5th year this December, and he's got 75 now. And I only know the 5th year because that's when they start coming free and clear for him, because he did the 5-year mortgages like we teach. And so he's got 75 now, and they start coming free and clear this December. And think about that. He's only 29 years old. So think about the age, and he's got 75 houses that are going to start being free and clear this year. I mean, that means when he's 35, if he bought nothing else, if he never bought another property, by the time he's 35, he's got 75 free and clear houses. How easy is your life with 75 free and clear houses paying you every month?
You just got to weather that first 5 years, right? That's
5 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fascinating, man.
And we have a system for that too, where there's no money out of pocket, and you don't have to stress if you have a vacancy or a non-payer or a court, because we get a down payment. And I have a system for them keeping the down payment to offset if a year or 2 years go by and that guy defaults or moves out, so you don't have to pay out of pocket. So we have that $5,000 they put down, and I tell them, I said, you don't spend $1 until you own it free and clear, which is against what everyone teaches. Everyone's like, oh no, make the spread on month number 1, you're making this, and month 2. I said, until the house is free and clear, you don't make nothing.
Oh, so you're doing like an envelope system almost, right? Like a profit first type of thing where you push it to the side?
Almost. I don't make them separate it, but I say you just leave it in the account. We don't take anything until the houses are paid off. That's why I wholesale also. I tell people, you wholesale, that's how you make your money right now. You need money this month, you do that from wholesaling. Slow flips are for your future. One of my guys' LLC is called For My Future LLC. And I loved it. I mean, because slow flips is all about securing your freedom for your future. And wholesaling, we make money right now. And so that's why I tell them, you got to really do both.
Well, what is the worst thing that could happen with this process besides not making it through the first 5 years, right?
So there's a few worse things, and I've been through all of them, and even the worst isn't that bad. But I'll tell you, a worst is like we give them complete freedom, right? We try and treat them as though they were the bank, which means you don't have to call me if you want to paint, if you don't have to call me if you want to do construction. It's your house. You do what you want, right? Well, I have had one guy who thought he was a better contractor than he was, and he completely gutted the house before he defaulted. So when I got it back, it was studs. And I walked in and I was like, oh man, what am I going to do here? Because one of our rules is we try and only have houses, slow flips, that are livable. They don't have to be in great condition, but they have to have a kitchen and bathrooms and be livable. Somebody can fix them up. And this was a gutted shell. And so I was a little distressed when I saw that. And I, like I always do, I'm like, well, I'm here anyway. Let me stick some signs out while we're here. And I ended up getting a buyer, but this buyer paid cash for it. And so I might have had it sold at 89 originally, and my guy was paying. Actually, I ended up owning it free and clear because he was there long enough to completely pay it off. But by the time he gave it back to me, it was a shell, and then I ended up selling it at a cheaper price. I might have sold it for 40, but I had nothing into it at that point. I had zero. He completely paid it off. So I had no investment into it, and then I ended up selling it for less. I think I sold it for 40, but it was a cash sale. And, that was bad. I had another one. And this was a package I bought, 24 houses I bought at once. And it was my own fault. I didn't do my great due diligence on inspecting each one of them. Most of them were occupied. Some weren't. A couple were boarded up. Well, I was in the Bahamas, and I had a guy go to, take off the boards, do pictures and video. And then he sends me a video and a text, and he says, did you know this house had a fire? And I was like, no. And he sent me, and it was burned up inside, right? It had a fire. And I was really mad at first. And then I started doing the math, and I paid $21,000 each for these houses. And keep in mind, this was only 4.5 years ago. These houses are worth about $199 now each.
Holy moly.
Wow.
Anyway, so I had decided, I said, you know what, if I have to give this house away, donate it to a church, throw it away, then it's like I paid $22,000 each for them. I still got a really good deal. Let me just suck it up. He still marketed it, and like we always do, we normally did $89,000, $3,000 down, and $875 a month. This one he did, I think it was $2,000 down, $575 a month, and $59,000 sales price. And we got a buyer, a contractor who bought it, completely renovated it. We drive by and I'm like, holy cow, there's a new roof, new windows, new everything. And this, of all of them, this guy already resold it and we got paid off the balance, the $50,000. And I'm like, this was one I was like, I could throw it away and it was still a good deal. And where I was going with that is these are like worst case type things that can happen. Mm-hmm. And we've still always been able to come out on top because what we really offer, And this is what I always try and stress to people when they try and compare all different things. What we're really offering is the financing. There's guys who are, and I don't know who you know, but I'm saying there's guys that who want to flip houses or want to be landlords, that they know everything to do to be a contractor, to renovate, to rehab, or to landlord, but they don't have good enough credit or tax returns to be able to get a loan. So we sell to guys with owner financing that'll buy from us, and then they'll rehab them and rent them, or rehab them and sell them. But they still use us even though they're paying our higher prices, because they don't have to qualify. They don't need to get a bank. They don't need tax returns. We have guys that buy our houses and do Section 8 rentals, and they pay us $875 a month, and they're getting like $1,400 a month from Section 8. And people are like, well, why wouldn't they just buy them for the lower price? Well, because they don't have the bank ability to get a mortgage and or tax returns. And so they can buy them from us, and they're still crushing it. I have one guy that has 13 houses from me. They kill it. They're doing great, making a bunch of money. But people are confused. They're like, but I don't get it. Why would he buy from you? Well, I'll tell you, because we offer the financing. Financing's huge, because if you have no ability to get financing, a lot of people feel dead in the water if you don't know any other way.
That's fascinating, because I thought your exit was going to be to the end buyer, but what you're saying is that your exit is an end buyer and an investor.
I prefer investors. Investors because for a couple reasons, but one of the big reasons is we can sell multiple properties to the same guy.
Right.
So we have a lot of guys that have 2 and 3 and 4, and I think my biggest one is 13. I love selling to investors. The downside with it selling to an investor, and I've had this happen, is if an investor goes bad, meaning they mismanage their money or whatever happened, now all of a sudden you have 2 or 3 or 5 back at once, right? Rather than one property. The upside is you have somebody else completely running what I refer to this guy as 2005 Scott, my old business model. You have these guys completely running 2005 Scott's model, where they're doing all the work, they're doing collections, they're doing all the repairs, and then they're sending the money, which used to be up to the bank, but now they're sending it to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I like selling to investors, and they love it too. Believe me, they know my numbers. It's all public record, so they know what we bought it for and what we're selling it for, and it doesn't bother them at all, because they're getting their value on the financing. They're still making money. I have guys that buy my houses and do room rentals, and some of them are getting like $3,000 a month, and they're paying me $900 because they're doing it by the room. I don't mind. One of my big sayings is, don't count the money in another man's pocket. I don't mind how much they make. Don't worry about what I make. We all do our own business.
That's awesome. I feel like I'm totally monopolizing you, Frank. I know you have some questions.
No, I'm loving this, and I'm looking for a moment to shift, because one of the things that I always have admired about Scott is the real estate is the vehicle, but his passion is his family. And that's one of the things that a lot of us get into real estate for, or try to get out of our 8 to 5, or just looking for that next vehicle to get a lot of our time back. Right. And of course, the stress of financials. And one thing is, like, I hope you guys who are listening can understand that Scott has done this. He's done the let's call air quote, the old way, and he's now doing it the Scott's way. And it's allowing him to spend a lot more time doing what he wants when he wants. A lot of people say that, but then build a business that literally is the furthest away from accomplishing that. And what I really admire you for is what an incredible father you are with your son, what an incredible husband you are with your wife. I'm sure there are things, you could be doing better, but in terms of what I've seen, we haven't even touched on this. How many deals does your son currently have? How old is he, and how many deals does he have?
He's 14. He has 30.
No way.
I want y'all just to understand that a little bit, right?
Well, one of the things, this is interesting that you said that, Frank. One of the things that I had to have a realization on, and I've exceeded these numbers, mind you, but is that most of us do not need the amount of money that we think we need. Because we all are following, especially through the years now of social media, and we see these crazy numbers. And when I do a thing with my students when they come on board, where your future vision exercise, and we put a dollar amount next to what they actually need to live that ideal life, right? Money wise. And the average, and this is crazy because I'm telling them to dream with no limits, right? If you can live your ideal life, what does it take to live? And I do this on purpose, so I know how many slow flips you need to live your ideal future. On average, it's $10,000 a month. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, well, we can do this in no time. I can get to freedom in 5 to 7 years. That's huge. Now, sometimes people come in and they're like, well, I want $80,000 a month, and that's fine. I used to want $100,000 a month before 2005 Scott was going for $100,000 a month and blew it all, parlaying it. When I got to my number now, my goal now is I'm at 175. I'm going to get to 200 properties because I feel it's a nice round number. And then I'm probably going to stop. Because we've blown away all of our numbers, right? But the reality is, when someone tells me I want 80,000 a month or 85,000 a month, what I usually tell them, I say, because this is a month, mind you, I always say, well, break it down for me. How are you going to spend that? And they'll go through, well, I want to have this, and I'll put numbers next to it, and I end up with, okay, you're at 15 grand. What are you doing with the other 65 grand? Well, then I can buy more houses. I said, well, that's not what we're talking about. That's not what you need to live your future vision. That's once you actually have to put a dollar amount next to what it takes to live your ideal life, it's amazing how much less it is than what most people think. Where I was going with that, Frank, is that is what has enabled me. Once I got to what I call freedom, when you have more money coming in than you need to live, right? That's what it's, and believe it or not, I make 10x more that I don't have to work now than I did when I was working, which is funny because you have time now to think and to do the things you want to do. But that enabled me to never miss a ball game, never miss. I mean, we go on a ton of vacations. We take my son's friend with us everywhere we go, because I only have one and I don't want to, when he was little, it didn't matter. But as he got older, he wants another kid with him. It enabled us to do whatever it is we want to do. There's not much more beyond that. Like sometimes people say, oh, this person did a deal and got 10 million, 20 million, whatever. And I'm always like, what don't I have that I would want? If $20 million fell out of the sky today, like what would be different in my life tomorrow? And I hate to say it because it sounds wrong of me to even say, there's nothing I want. There's nothing that I'm hoping for to someday to get.
Right.
I have everything that I want. Now, it doesn't mean what would happen if I had $20 million fall out of the sky tomorrow into my lap? You know what I got? I have a burden now because I'm smart enough to know I have to invest that. I'm not spending a dollar of it. I'm going to buy $20 million worth of more houses, which means now I have a job. I'm like, I got to get back to work, babe. I got $20 million I have to deploy. But barring that, there's no thing that I'm hoping someday to get. I live literally in a paradise house that I couldn't imagine ever even having. There's nothing, like there is not one house that I've ever seen that I'm like, oh, I like that one better than mine. If I had more money, I would buy that one, right? I've not seen one in my area anyway that I would say I would trade mine for that. I'm buying a house now, as you know, Frank, in the Bahamas, and it's the ideal house that I couldn't imagine saying, oh, there's something I want that's different, better, or more. It's exactly what I would want. I don't know, maybe I'm being too small-minded. I don't know what it is I would buy that I don't have now if I had more money. And so then you have the question of, you can still make more money. Everybody can, but how much of your life are you trading away for it? Because everything's a trade-off. So yeah, I could make more, but then do I have to pass up on these hours or this time spent doing whatever it is I do want to do? And I'm like, nope, sorry. I mean, maybe it's because I'm starting to feel old, but I'm like, no, I'm choosing my life and you guys go make all the money.
That's really like the core of kind of the end goal, I would say, for most people. Yeah, obviously, if there's people out there, you want to drive the Ferraris, you want to live in the big house, have a yacht and all those things, hey, more power to you. If that's in your future vision. A lot of us are just, especially the everyday mom and pop who are trying to kind of break out of this, job or any type of thing that they're doing that just isn't bringing them joy. It's really because it's taking ultimately taking their time away. I've seen some of the richest people becoming the most miserable people. I'm sure you've seen plenty of those.
Absolutely.
And I know you have social circles of people who have done, you said you're the brokest person in the room sometimes.
Yeah.
And yet sometimes you're the happiest person in the room. And they're always like, well, Scott, what are you doing? I was, well, I'm not, I don't need to dream bigger. I'm living the life I have now. And you just built your dream home that you were living in now, when you're about to buy one in the Bahamas and you're 49. And this is really where you helped me shift my mindset. I'm 39, about to be 40. My retirement goal is where I don't have to worry about money is at 45. Right? You choose to work because you really do love what you do. And I do love what I do. But this really, like, we're taught that 65 is the number, 55 is the number. I see my parents, what do they call the baby boomer generation, where they literally thought that's what they had to do. And now they're enjoying their money, about to turn 70. And I'm like, holy crap, their bodies physically aren't able to even support the fun they want to have now. And to see you be able to do this now, and it's, what was the saying? It's not how much you die with, it's the...
Yeah. So this is, are you talking about what I said the other day?
Right. I think you were talking about
so I tell people this all the time. So this is really interesting. And you haven't heard this before. So a lot of what I say, people will argue about, like, I'm debt free. I owe nothing on my house, my cars. I have no debt anywhere except on some of my houses that are in the 5-year plan. And people will make the argument of, you can make so much more if. my old argument, 2005, Scott used to argue to the death with this. You would make so much more money if you can pull out that $2 million from this house and you can buy 10 more that are producing this. You're only going to pay 3% and you're making 12% or whatever, all that math magic, right? And they're right. This is why I don't argue it. They're absolutely right. But, and this is the statement I always make. I always say it depends on the game you're playing. If you're playing to die with the most money possible, then you are right. You should leverage everything. You will make more money, providing everything works out perfect. And in 30 years, when everything's paid off, you will die with more money. But if you're playing a game to live the best life possible now, I said, well, then my way definitely wins 100% of the time. The leverage model will make you more money. And if your goal is to die with the most money possible, then I'm like, well, then that is the game you should play. Buy everything financed and then pull out the equity and buy more. I did that. If that's the game you're playing, then play it. And you're right. And you'll die with more money than I have. And good on you. But if your goal is to just live the best life possible, then I think I have a pretty good plan.
Plus is recession proof, right? It doesn't matter.
And that's the other thing, is that I've already lost, right? I've already lost stuff and realized, and I was a huge success before I lost everything, right? In the world's eyes. And it really was eye-opening to how I really didn't have anything. I had a job working for the bank and they fired me, basically. And so I sleep well knowing now that if the whole world goes to crap, I said, I'm not going to lose anything. I may have, my income might go down, but I don't owe anything. I'm not going to lose anything. I don't have anything at risk of starting over. And I don't want to start over. I'm not doing that again.
That's the American dream. So what would you tell that guy or that girl right now that's in that rat race, that's in that 9 to 5, that can't seem to figure out they're doing paycheck to paycheck no matter how much they make, right? How do they get started on this? So what would be your advice to them?
So the two things. One is I tell people, if you know real estate's your avenue, first off, when we're assuming that whoever's listening already knows they want to do real estate, I always tell people, I say, first off, do one thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing every single day towards your real estate investing business. What happens is so many times people read books or get into a program and they become overwhelmed because there's 40 things they need to do. And so they go through the list of the 40 things and then they say, I'm not doing anything. And so I try with my people to give them one thing. And it might be something simple: buy your domain name, get away, something simple. It doesn't matter, but something every day. Even if it was just people saying, put out 200 signs. I'm like, no, just put out one. Do something. As long as you do something every day, you will look back in a year, 2 years, 5 years, and you'll have a business and you won't see how you got there. But what people do the opposite is they get overwhelmed. They have so much they want to get done that they try for a day or two or a week. And then they're like, I don't have time for all this, and forget it. And I always try and push in the opposite direction. I'm like, just do one little thing. The other thing is, the biggest regret I hear from people on slow flips, especially, is they regret that they didn't start sooner. And the reason is, I've been preaching this for a while now. I started this in 2011, doing the free and clear and the slow flip model. And I have guys, and I had one just this week who signed up in my Freedom Accelerator program. And I've known him since then. And he said in his thing that he wrote up when he joined, he says, better late than never. Every year, I'm like, I'm going to get started. And when time passes, that's you can never get time back, right? And so when time passes, the only thing you're thinking is, especially when 5 years passes, is, had I started when I said I was going to start, I would already have them free and clear now. I would have already been at the finish line. And that's hard to take when you've been saying no. And then finally you're like, all right, I'm going to do it now. But yet those 2 years, 5 years, whatever passed, you don't get that time back. You're still starting on step one. And so that's the other thing I tell people. I said, if you know this is for you, if you know in your heart this is the life you want and this is for you, time is the only thing you don't get back. I'm like, start, because you got to wait out that 5 years, and there's no way around it unless you have $1 million in your bank account and you want to pay cash for everything.
Well, Mike, I have one more question, and then this satisfies everything I've been able to pull out of Scott in our time today. And I appreciate you taking the time to really go deep with just your business and how your mindset behind all of it. Coming back to your son, and I truly believe generational wealth starts with our downline, right? We can create it, but it can easily be squandered if that education, that understanding isn't established with our next generation. Obviously, your son is 14, has 30 free and clear properties, and he's probably thinking, like, what is, some advice, one piece of advice that you consistently breathe into him to maybe, one, humble him, but also keep his mindset in the right direction as he gets older?
So that's a good question, and he's only 14, and so I can't even say with certainty that I did the right thing. You know, we don't, I know I say that seriously because I think about that often. Most of the people that I know who are wildly successful, right, started off not like my son starting off. They started off like me, mowing lawns, you know,
Struggling.
and that's how most of us all started. And so I don't know yet. How does he end up starting the way he starts? We're working very hard for him to have an understanding of money and the understanding of everything, but we really don't know, because I think about like my closest circle of friends who are all very successful. Really, nobody started with any money whatsoever, and so I don't know that I did him a favor yet. We'll find out in the future. We'll find out as we go, and I'm working hard at that. The other thing, and this is something that I preach to everybody, but I especially try and make sure that he fully understands, is that your money, and then I mean this to everybody. I see people blow it so many times, is you cannot spend your money ever. Your money cannot be spent. You can only spend the money that your money makes. And I really try and push that so hard, because I've seen so many people get an inheritance, 500 grand, 2 million. I see one girl get $2 million, blow it, 500 grand, 300 grand, 200 grand. And all of a sudden they're the richest guy in the world for a month or two or six. And then they're back to broke, starting over again. And I'm always like, you don't, first of all, I tell them two things. First of all, it's okay to do nothing. Don't feel like you have to. They're like, well, if I do nothing, I'm wasting money because it's not making a return. I said, it's okay to not make a return rather than lose it all, right? And then the second thing is, if you just commit to, if it only makes 2 grand a year, 10 grand a year, whatever the dollar amount is, that you can spend on anything you want. But the actual money you can never spend. And that's why I said, if $20 million fell from the sky tomorrow, I now have a job. I have to go deploy it all. Because if I spend that 20 million, it's gone. But if I deploy it, I can spend the money it makes, which we typically make a 20% to a 30% return. I can spend that every single month, and it's mine. And then it still keeps coming every month. And so that's the biggest thing to talk about my son. And I try and instill not just on him, but on everybody, is when you get money, you can't spend it. You can only spend the money that your money makes. And if you do that, you will infinitely have money. And that's the biggest thing I try and get across to people.
That's absolute gold. Yeah, absolutely. How do you keep it? Is he cognizant of all, like, does he have access to all the money, or do you have to?
No, he doesn't have any access to anything. He's 14.
Okay.
So,
Okay, yeah. Like,
no,
man,
no,
I'm
he
about to
doesn't.
do this with my daughter, right? So how do you
Yeah,
navigate that?
and the goal is going to be, again, once he is deciding, hopefully he decides he wants to work in the business and do real estate. The goal at that time will be, again, not to have access to the money, but to take that money and start buying properties.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't want you to just say, well, I have enough and I can just sit, at the house in the Bahamas. I want it to be where, how do I take this 30 grand a month and turn it into 300 grand a month? Because when you're starting at that age, that's a piece of cake to do. As you get older, it's harder and harder. You don't have time on your side. But when you're starting, if he starts at 18 or 20, the compound effect, everybody knows the rule of 72, right? And divide it by your interest rate. Well, when you're doing, even on the low end, a 20% rate, how long does it take to double that? 3.5, 4 years. Yeah. And when you're starting at 20, I mean, you can double it a bunch of times. And so that would be the goal. But again, he's only 14, so I can't say it's a success. And let's do a part 2 to this in 20 years. And we'll see.
I love it. I love that idea. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Scott, obviously you shared such an amazing insight to what you do. For many people listening today, slow flips is a brand new concept, and I hope this has inspired you to explore it a bit deeper. Scott, how do people find out more information from you? Where can they go? What information do you have for them?
Well, I'm everywhere, obviously, as far as social, under my name. But I think I told you, I'm not sure if I did. I wrote a book that's just recently out called The Art of the Slow Flip. And I'm pretty sure I told you, Frank, I was going to give a free copy to everybody that listens to your podcast, and they can get it right at slowflip.com, slowflip.com, and just put in your information. I think you pay the shipping, which is like $6 or something. And I have the books already. So everybody that wants one can get a free copy. And
awesome.
You haven't, I don't think you've read it yet, but when you read it, you'll see I held nothing back. I literally go through the entire process from start to finish on how to do slow flips in the book. And so that's the best place to start. Other than that, you can find me on all socials. I'm everywhere.
Follow him, guys. He gets some gold out there. And again, it's just some unfiltered, perfect content. I love the way you're managing your socials yourself, as well as your own businessman. You're crushing it out there, and continue to inspire, many, many more. And I hope we can get your message out there. But that's what I got, Mike. Anything else from you, man?
Man, no, it was an honor, brother. I mean, I learned a lot, and I appreciate you coming on. And I'm gonna buy that book like right now.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed being here.
Well, that concludes our episode today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and for great content like this moving forward. Scott, it was an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing you in probably in a few months, and say hi to the family for me.
Will do. Thank you for having me. Have a fantastic day.
All right. Scott. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Peace. So that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you received value from this episode. If so, please share this podcast with your friends so we can help more people just like you. Also, hook up with us on Facebook, IG, and YouTube at REIL Talks. That's REIL Talks. So until next time, keep it cool and keep it real.